Welcome to Chai with Ping. This is Ping Robert. In this podcast, I cover underrepresented and personal stories. Join me with a cup of chai and take a listen.
Welcome back to Chai with Ping. My name is Ping Robert. Welcome back to my show. And I cover immigrant stories and underrepresented or minority issues. So if you haven't already, please do follow and subscribe my channel and also share to those who are interested. You can find me on Facebook or Instagram. Today, we're going to talk about a very minority issue, which people kind of don't talk about because we don't have enough knowledge. However, I invite our special guest to talk about it. Today, we're going to talk about addictions. So let's welcome Stephanie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Ching.
Yay! So Stephanie and I, we met at church and also on the same campus. And now she graduated from her master program and she's working as a therapist. How's that going?
It's going really well. I work in the community mental health centers, and ever since I just enjoy my job, enjoy my time with my clients. So thank you for inviting me today.
Yay! And I know that it has been a very busy season since the pandemic hit, and then you have been working from home, right? Mm-hmm. And then I heard from my therapists, like all the clients just kind of show up. Is that true for you?
I guess it's a little bit different for me because the population I work, it's more like severe and persistent mental health issues that it depends, but I definitely see some growth because of people nowadays doesn't really need, to go out to the office, doesn't have the barriers of transportation issues. So yeah, I feel like I'm keep circling, but that will be a yes.
And Stephanie is originally from Taiwan. How long have you been in Colorado?
Since 2016.
Yay. Are you going to stay here?
Yes, because I am married. So
yay, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, cool. All right. So let's just jump right in. I have several questions because I am also very new to the topic of addictions. So Stephanie, how would you define addictions?
Well, addiction is a chronic brain disease. It's not defined by me. It's defined by actually the National Institute on Drug Abuse. It's a well-known brain disease, a relapsing brain disease that is really characterized by compulsive drug seeking and abuse, despite the harmful consequences that people is aware of it, but still people will find it hard to stop the use. So personally, I would define more specific about the compulsions. Why is it so hard for people to stop using either if we're talking about drugs or even some of the behavioral addictions?
What are the common addictions that we usually hear about? I know there are drug addictions. Alcoholism is also one. Gambling.
Right. Sex addiction.
That's right. Mm-hmm. How do you usually tell when a person comes to you and then they will say, this is not addiction. I just, gamble or I drink so many times outside a week. So how do you kind of have a protocol how to define if they really have addictions, or how do you tell?
Yeah, if commonly speaking that kind of the definitions I just shared is just focusing on if that behaviors can bring that person negative consequences, but that person still keep going either, do the drugs or have some, harmful behaviors. That's when the time that you can call it right away, hey, that person has addiction issues. Okay. But we can also talk about from neurological point of view, how does, if we're talking about drugs or, some addiction behaviors, how does it affect it, or the science, the chemical stuff in our brain that sometimes play a lot of factors into it. But I will say is about the time that, sometimes when people started to not be honest to you about their drug use and some of their behavior, that's a huge red flag for me.
And it is interesting, like you just mentioned, that it can be a brain disease. But is it all, like all the people will suffer from this brain disease, or some people are kind of nurtured in the environment and they kind of pick up that addiction?
That's a great question. I guess this is also questions can be generalized to mental health and physical health. It's the combinations of, like you said, nurture and, nurtures and stuff. It depends on the individual. Sometimes we even heard people talk about functional abusers because they are using drug currently, but it's not affecting there isn't like a huge significant amount of negative consequences for them. So yeah, it depends on the individuals. I know this might not be some of the answers that maybe your listener wanted to hear, wanted to find the right answer, but it really just depends. But I will say that some people are most susceptible to become, be addicted to either the drugs or certain behaviors because how their brain is wired and the environment they're exposed to, or certain mental health issues, or even when we talk about trauma. If people experience trauma, you often expose them to the position that they might abuse the substance in order to cope with their trauma.
That's a very good point. I think, so you mentioned there is genetic influence, maybe environment, or they can be controlling very well how they behave. And also there's trauma. I just finished watching a series called Hoarders on Netflix. So most of those, I don't know, they're not actors. Those main characters in the series, they usually have some kind of trauma. Either is I lost a family, or after being a vet, from retiring from the army and all that. And then they start collecting a lot of things, and then all the way till like from the floor to the roof. And so, I think you brought out a very good point. But like how, I know that this is a very under-discussed topic. What are the common myths around addictions or addictive behaviors that you have heard from other people?
Like, it's okay for me to just take a couple of joints or drink a couple of alcohol. It doesn't really affect me physically, or, addiction it doesn't cause death. I can control it. I can control by myself. I do have a choice. That's the common myths I heard from people. Do you have any myths that you heard from people?
I think it's just around, I think smoking is a very common one in Taiwan and around my communities. A lot of people kind of get out from the military services after, I don't know how long, because different years for different people. But like a lot of them, they came out from the military service and they start smoking because they said, well, the environment kind of caused me to do that. Or I watch TV and a lot of people say, oh, my parents smoke or my dad smokes all the time and they just cannot quit. And for me, because based on what you just said, I feel there is a little ignorance from the children or the family side to say that, oh, my family just don't want to quit. And it doesn't seem to be a very easy thing to quit. Is that true?
Yeah, it doesn't, because, it is a chronic disease. How can you cure the disease yourself without going to a treatment or have outside forces? I mean, there are some drugs, of course, that's easier. I mean, doesn't have that huge amount of effect, but still it is going to affect your chemicals and the worst systems and all the stuff that it will take time to recover if it recovers.
Yeah.
Right.
As a therapist, how do you usually approach people with addictive behaviors?
That's an interesting question.
Have you met any? Do you encounter a lot of people with addictions?
Because like most of my clients, they have, severe mental issues, often have co-occurring disorders, which we will say is more like related to substance. Yeah, I do, especially for my clients, experience like severe trauma, that currently or from the past. They do depends a lot on the substance. by force or out of their choice at the beginning, but go on, it becomes as part of them. It is hard to just get rid of the desire of wanting to go back by themselves.
How would you say that your approach is different from like their family members? Because I think a lot of family members would just say like, you should quit. We believe in you, you should just quit. And then like, don't drink for how many days and all that. But how would you talk to those people?
I will say that because I'm a therapist, I'm in a neutral positions. I wouldn't, necessarily like judge my clients. I tried my best to, provide that non-judgmental environment for every one of my clients. And, and just listen to them about, why they're struggling and this issue. And also ask them, because some clients, they don't necessarily think this is an issue and they don't want it to quit. So, and then from our therapists and the points that we want the best for clients and to be with clients on where they're at. But for family members, kind of just, it depends on the roles and the hierarchy in the families. Maybe they have the top-down thinkings or something like that, and then think that the client might have a choice to quit. And that's definitely different from, how therapists perceive, or at least how I perceive addictions. So, yeah, and also I will not get emotional with clients, right? But family is tough. Like when you see your families in a position you don't necessarily think that's good. Of course, you have the desire, you wanted to get him or her out. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good point for our listeners to kind of think about how we want to approach our family or loved ones issues. And it might not be a quick fix. And, having therapists to step in and support in a long run probably will be beneficial for them. I have another question. Can a person really become clean? Because in the movies, we usually see those, AA meetings. It's like, I have been clean for the last 6 months. Can they really become clean, or they kind of just relapse back? There's always the risk.
That's another great question. If we look at the definition as a disease, can a disease really be cured? Like, can we, I often like to mention to my client from the physical health standpoints, because it's easier to understand. Like, you got the flu one day. Can you get the flu again? Yes, of course. So, we're talking about more severe situations about cancer, diabetes. Is there a cure? Or it might be though, but is there like a absolute answers? Right.
It could be a very long-term thing to deal with.
Right. And but there is a hope of, being able to manage well in the recoveries, not relapse. But the key will be like how determined you are for that individuals, and, and not to mention that why the persons get addicted first place means that the person's very, easier to get addicted, or there's some outside forces making become an addict, right? So those factors are still there. Depends on those factors. Are they cleared out or have them been processed? If not, then higher chance that the person's, in the way of journey of recovery might be harder than those people that have, process those mental health or environmental factors or have family supports.
Do you think it will be better for, let's take alcohol as an example. Do you think it's like 0 is the best, or they can kind of take the alcohol in a controlled amount? What will be your suggestion for your clients?
This is just my personal opinions. I feel like different therapists has different approach. I will say depends on like how, if that person has been severe to become like with a diagnosis and, it's alcoholic, then if he or she being exposed to a cup of alcohol or just even a taste of it, like you can imagine that what can be triggers. maybe all 10 years or 5 years, how hard is to stay sober, and just because of one steps can triggers, many factors, not just brains and, emotional too. So I would say if you wanted to, keep staying sober in recovery, you better not, go to the old paths that you used to use. Yeah. At least at my experience when I'm working with my clients, they say that, oh, it's just a party, drink, and I celebrate, my daughter's birthday, but blah, blah, blah. But often they all came back to the old routes. So I wouldn't say it, again, it depends on individuals. I believe that there are some people out there that just have a really strong mind and will, but this is something we're talking about. It's been long-term for that person, that being diagnosed as being called as alcoholic, the chemicals that in his or her brains has already changed. So it's different from people just like, oh, I'm just taking a sip and have entertaining use with my friends. That's a different story. So we're talking about the population that become an addict, right? So,
So it's kind of risky. So it's either all out or all in, kind of. Yeah. But I think you also mentioned a great point. It really depends. Like a lot of people will have different cases, or different therapists will have different approaches. So it's better to talk to the therapist if the listener is an addict or a family member. I think a personalized care plan can actually help better. So then we're moving into the realm of, the support community, the family, the friends. If we have those loved ones who are struggling with addictions, what should we do?
Connected them to treatment.
Okay.
Trying to ease that burdens a little bit on yourself, because I know it can be really hard to speak to your members that become an addict. And and not to mention that when you see them, just don't feel like the same anymore. The communication is not there. And I will also encourage the families to sign up to some sort of like supports groups, because it is an issue that a lot of families are going through, that you're not alone, that being able to recognize that this feels, very comfort and helpful. And to clients too, like to people who are, addict, support groups are a huge amount in treatments, not just individual treatments, but also to have that surrounding of groups, like you said, AA or NA.
So what you just said, that connecting the addicts to the resources that they can get, but also as family members or friends or loved ones, they probably also need a little support in their own life, because it's a huge thing happening.
Yeah, or have some, when you're in a group, or even sign up to therapy, that therapists can provide psychoeducation to you. He'll let you know better what is addiction looks like. Instead of, online resources, they're always helpful, but you're not sure what kind of resources you're reading at, right? So it's always been helpful to have second opinions from the professionals.
Got it. Cool. Do you have any resources that you can share with us? Maybe it's like websites?
Since I work in community mental health centers, I would say that, any neighbors, community mental health centers are providing services for substance and mental health. Or if there is more specific, that will be another topic of ours. It's like, of course, there will be more specific use of drugs that provide like medical assistant treatments, we call, or if there is even about rehab or detox facility, but that all depends on what the person is at the moment, what kind of service can be beneficial for him or her. But if you just have general questions where you don't know where to reach out, I guess local community mental health centers, and there are a lot of online resources too, like supports groups, and some web page can provide that information.
So we can probably provide some links in the episode notes, and then I can just add in later after recording. Yeah.
Okay,
Cool. Wow, I learned so much, and this is very cool. And I didn't intend to make it a very, hardcore mental health episode, because I think this is just episode 101 for a general education for us, like me, that we don't know that much about addictions and all that. But in the future, if the listeners are interested, I can probably reach out to more therapists, or even Stephanie, you can come again to talk more about a certain kind of addiction or any other things that I can help to clarify with.
Sure, that sounds great to me.
Yeah. Are there any final thoughts before we end?
No, not really. I guess it's the same point as even though you're, in addictions yourself or the family members, just remember that you're not alone, and there's always resources there for you to reach out, as long as you reach out and you ask.
Awesome. Cool. Is there a little restaurant information that you want to tag in with the episode? I'll open the door for you.
Commercial time. Yes.
Promotion time. So Stephanie's husband is having a kind of a restaurant-ish in a food court.
Yeah. So we recently opened Mexican restaurants or food courts and Castle outlet. It only had 4 stores in it, and we're the only one, 2 or one of them still open. So as soon as you walk in, you will know it's right there.
Yes.
But yeah, we have awesome grilled chickens and Mexican style steak and tacos, burritos.
Yeah.
So yeah,
if you're in Colorado, if you happen to be shopping in Castle Rock Outlet, do pay a visit to Stephanie's husband's restaurant. Wow. Thank you so much for coming to the show, Stephanie.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to Chai with Ping. If you think someone will benefit from this episode, don't forget to share with them. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. If you like my show, you can buy me a chai with small gifts. Details are in the episode notes. Till next time!